Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah talk. Our guest this week is Lise Stern from Hebrew College, and she has a wonderful Parsha to talk about. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Your Parsha is Vaerah, one of the most consequential Parshas in the Torah. In this Parsha, Moshe and Aaron repeatedly come before Pharaoh to demand, in the name of God, let my people go. Pharaoh repeatedly refuses, and then the plagues begin. 7 of them are counted in our Parsha, included the waters of the Nile turn to blood, swarms of frogs overrun the land, lice infest all men and beasts, hordes of wild animals invade the cities, a pestilence kills the domestic animals, etc., etc. The first pasuk of this parsha says, "Vaydaber Elohim el Moshe vayomer elav ani Adonai." God spoke to Moses, and he said to him, "I am the Lord." So let's begin with Moshe. He's at the beginning of a journey, a long journey as a leader, but he's no longer a young person, right?
Yeah, we're told his age here, and we're told his brother's age. In fact, the first time we met Aaron was last week in Shmot, and we didn't know that he had a brother before that. It's kind of this convenient appearance when he's making all these objections about leading the people, and finally God says, "Your brother Aaron will speak to you." Oh, by the way, you have a brother, and then we meet Aaron then and that's how Aaron is first identified, Aharon Avicha. And there are various times throughout the Torah when Aaron is mentioned that he is identified as his brother rather than just Aaron. I mean, sometimes it's both, but there's always significant situations where he's categorized as
Right.
Moshe's brother.
Right, and we know that Moshe grew up in the palace, in Pharaoh's palace. So he's going to be the leader of a people, but these aren't really his people, right?
Right. He didn't. He didn't know, but he didn't. He identified with them. I mean, he killed for them, and that's what he had to run away. But he wasn't appreciated for having defended them either. And it makes you just reading these stories. I mean, from Abraham through Jacob and Joseph, why God chooses who He chooses to be His intermediary and prophet. And you almost wonder if it's almost be like these are who are supposed to be the representatives of people, whether God wants that or not. Because, what's so good about? I mean, what we know about Moshe? I mean, he's a murderer, and he's a coward. You know, he fled. He's a shepherd. He's alone in the desert all the time, and what's so great about him? We don't really at this point. I mean, he defended people that were enslaved. That seems to be a good thing, that he was looking out for people who were weak. But and he never had a conversation with God before the burning bush.
Right.
So it's like on both sides, like it or not, he's the person who can hear God. And can in while he's awake, while he's asleep. I mean, once his eyes are opened and he sees the bush that's not consumed, he's the one who, more than anyone else in the Torah, gets God, is able to communicate, and it really. I mean, they have a very intimate relationship.
Right.
At this point, we're not seeing that. At this point, Moshe's objecting a lot.
Yeah, he's reluctant. He doesn't want the job.
No, which may be part of his appeal. And his humility, his humbleness is one of his characteristics. But it's also kind of annoying, and how he's presented. It's like, I thought we settled this. I thought we got past that. Yes, you're not the greatest speaker. Okay, we've worked that out. And then he brings it up 2 more times this week. That is like, I can't speak. My lips are uncircumcised. Whatever that expression means.
Right. Right,
And
and at the center of our parsha is the ultimate encounter between the two brothers and the king. Well, the king of Egypt is he's the head of an empire, and they try to convince him to do something that he doesn't want to do, and then they begin punish him for it. And we know that ultimately, he tends to accept the proposal, but then God hardens his heart, which is a very
actually,
troubling notion.
well, that's in all these 7 plagues, I was going through them. There's only one in which God does the hardening of his heart.
Right, but later in the
All the
next
other
parsha, it
times,
happens again.
but in the first 5 plagues and in the 7th plague, Pharaoh hardens his own heart, but I don't think the conventional, the popular idea is like that God makes it impossible for him
To say yes.
to let the people go. But there are 2 words that are used. There's chazak and there's kaved that are used for different times. And this time it's chazak. And Pharaoh does not want to let the people go. He absolutely does not want to let the Israelites go at all. And he makes that very clear. And each time, and in those first 7 plagues, there are 3 times he says yes and changes his mind. And one is at the time of the frogs, which is sort of odd because his magicians can also make frogs, and his magicians can also make blood, but they can't make them go away. So, and on those instances, he changes his own. Once things are fine, he changes his own. So God actually enables him to do what he wants. God doesn't make him go against his will. The going against it by having these negative forces at play, those are what are actually making Pharaoh not use his own free will. But by God, chazet, by God strengthening, like he's letting Pharaoh do what he really wants. And what Pharaoh really wants is to not let
Basically, God instills in him this spine that he needs to be a mensch and follow his own instincts and own desires.
Yeah, he enables him to, these bad things are happening, but that's not what I want to do. And in spite of the negative things happening to me, and in spite of the consequences, I'm going to stick with what I really want, which is, I don't want these people. They're good here. They're slaves. Things are working out.
Yeah. Did you ever wonder why Pharaoh doesn't just kill Moses and Aaron? These 2 hacks are coming before the king of the empire. They're making preposterous demands. Why does he have so much patience with them? Why does he even negotiate with them?
Well, that's a great question. I was thinking about that also because why does he even allow them to like who are these guys that they can even speak with him constantly, like every day they're going and they're having this conversation and stretching hands out, and because he raised Moshe, so he's got a relationship with Moshe. And you wonder about Aaron, and they're like, well, I guess he's with him, so but it's like Moshe is the prodigal son. I mean, he left, he's back. There seems to be. I mean, we aren't told about like whether Pharaoh's happy to see him or not, but presumably he grew up in the palace and they have a relationship. So he is, and he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't want to kill the Israelites. He wants them there. He wants to use them. And he does also seem to believe in the Israelite God and the existence of the Israelite God. So it could also be just pragmatic that if he would kill Moses and Aaron, like who knows what kind of repercussions there would be.
Right, and this point about relationship of Pharaoh with Moshe is interesting also because this means that both the beginning and the end of the Israelite era in Egypt starts, it starts and ends with someone who's a leader but has personal relationships with the Pharaoh, with Joseph at the beginning of the era and Moshe at the end of it.
Right, that's a really good point. Similar but different, but they obviously have. There's a familiarity in how they interact. And you can contradict it even from like when Pharaoh first meets Joseph, he's just like some prisoner who happens to be able to interpret dreams, and then he does, and their whole relationship develops. But what we see of him interacting with Moshe, there seems to be. He's not saying, who are you, how dare you. I mean, that you would think someone in that position would be speaking if someone just came and said, hey, I want this thing from you and you better do it.
Right. So we'll recommend that all of our viewers and listeners go and read the Parsha. It's a dramatic one, so it's one that's easy to recommend. And thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.